Are you familiar with FBI Special Agents KYLE SERAPHIN?
I'm familiar with the name.
Is that yes?
I'm familiar with the name.
Let's bring in KYLE SERAPHIN. He's the FBI whistleblower who helped expose government censorship of our First Amendment rights.
Now, we only have this memo because a recently suspended FBI agent called KYLE SERAPHIN brought it to the public, and we're grateful that he did. Kyle, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
He's the host of something that strangely is called the KYLE SERAPHIN Show.
KYLE SERAPHIN, I can't thank you enough for speaking out. I knew you guys were out there, and I knew it was just a matter of time, but you got a lot of guts putting your face and your name to this. You're doing a service on behalf of the American people, and from the bottom of my cracked and broken heart sometimes, thank you very much.
Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent KYLE SERAPHIN.
Hello, my friends. Welcome to the KYLE SERAPHIN Show. I moved everything around, and of course, we started this off just a little bit rough. Well, it would be almost Monday, but it's Tuesday. It's Tuesday, May the 28th. We are rolling live right now on rumble.com/KYLE SERAPHIN. If you guys are not there, get there. Make sure you have liked this video. Make sure that you are following the channel. Make sure you have set up the alerts so you know when we go live. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to get started after a nice long weekend. Today's show, in a very rare moment, is dedicated to one of our regular listeners, Tack Penis, TACPNESS. Lest you think I'm saying something else, ladies and gentlemen, we are dedicating today's show to Tack P-Ness because you'll see why. You'll see. If you're not joined us over here on Rumble, make sure you're doing that because we're going to have him, and he's in the chat right now, I see. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are not going to be pulling any punches. Today is about something that I cannot pronounce very well, so we're going to play this for you.
Già troppa frociaggine.
Già troppa frociaggine. There is too much faggotry. So saith the Pope. That's right. I got a chance to make the word faggotry part of the news cycle, and I am going to hold it and run with it for everything I've got. Again, it is...
Già troppa frociaggine.
There it is. We're going to add that to our regular sound bites because I absolutely love it. Today's show is going to be talking about libertarians going full on. They're embracing the frociaggine, which is too good for me. I can't get away with this. I was looking at the news cycle and going, what is today's story? The through line is that, which is why, if you've seen, it's probably my favorite, maybe my absolute favorite thumbnail that I've ever done. We're going to talk about the Trump trial. We're going to talk about the climate change agenda, which is getting pushed in two ways. One, you should start eating bugs or at least stop eating beef because you're very, very bad. They want you to be eating everything other than that. Of course, the lead story for me today is that the Pope is calling out the gayness, openly gay men in the seminary and saying, that's not Catholic. Well, that's step number one. So that's pretty good. And right on the eve of Pride Month, no less, it's just too good. Also, I've got a weird story that I saw over the weekend. Many of you guys don't see this kind of stuff because you're not looking at CNN over the weekend, but CNN ran a strange story about Asians that are hiding in their homes and giving up on it. And I think the consequences of that are actually starting to come out in America as well. People, men who don't know how to do regular dude stuff. They don't know basics. Very simple things like going to a hardware store and understanding what they're looking at. So we're going to talk about all that stuff. Before we do, story of the day, Catholic Vote. Guys, if you're not following Catholic Vote on social media, please do so. Make sure that you're following them on wherever you are. If you're on Rumble, you can follow their Rumble channel. It's Catholic Vote. It's rumble.com/Catholic Vote. We do a once a week podcast there. It's probably going to go up to twice a week pretty soon, called Between the Lines. I want you guys to check that out. And then if you're not subscribed to The Loop, here's what you missed today, and it is worth your time. There's a scholarship opportunity for all of you who have a young, constitutionally minded high school graduate or soon-to-be high school graduate. You can sign up and apply for a scholarship up to $10,000. You're only going to see that at CatholicVote/Loop, LOOP. CatholicVote.org/Loop is today's Loop. You'll always be able to get it there if you don't want to even get the email. But you'll see that there's an application for a scholarship up to $10,000, and it is a constitutional study program. Why not? Because they're in it for the fight that's all about American faith, family, and freedom. You don't have to be a Catholic to get this. I looked into it. It's simply a specific type of study. And if you're into that, if you got a kid in that age bracket you want to recommend, send them that way. Why not? And while you're there, you guys can also buy the book. It's about $16. I just got my copy in the mail, I think over the weekend. I want to say we got it on Saturday. It's For God, Country, and Sanity, How Catholics Can Save America. It's edited by the president of Catholic Vote, whose name is Brian Birch. He's a friend. He's a guy that I saw last week on Wednesday. Really good dude. And I think there's 13 different authors that are filling the chapters of this. I wrote one of the chapters. You guys can see the rest of them. And why do Catholics need to save America? I think you'll see. Today's show is actually talking a little bit about that. You guys can't get enough of this either, huh? Listen.
Già troppa frociaggine.
Già troppa frociaggine. It's so good. Let's start with the number one frociaggine story of the day, and it comes straight from the Libertarian Party. Donald Trump went there to speak. He went there to try to seek the nomination and or the support and or convert hearts and or minds of libertarians. The problem is libertarians are decidedly unserious people. I'm sorry, libertarians. I don't know why you're like that. That doesn't mean all libertarians are unserious. Many of us have libertarian sentiments, but if you don't combine that with a Christian worldview, you have what my friend Dexter Taylor called an incomplete ideology. It's hard to be socially liberal and financially conservative. And at this point, I'm not confident that you would even be able to call these people financially conservative. They're not even that. They're sort of like, they're like big tent Republican types. Man, I went to PorkFest up in New Hampshire, which is the big libertarian convention, and it's full of weirdos. Let's just call them what they are. They're a bunch of flippin' weirdos. And so you see that instead of giving their nomination to somebody who actually has a little bit of clout, rather than give it to a Donald Trump or to an RFK Jr., who would be a maybe more in line with the leftist part of the party, the sort of woke libertarians, they went with this guy called Chase Oliver. And you're seeing a picture on the screen right now of Chase Oliver standing with a drag queen, which is to say a man wearing a wig and makeup and some hideous woman face. Very weird. He's carrying a Don't Tread on Me rainbow flag. That's the first I've seen of that one. And that's our man. So who is this guy? And what's his story? It says, coming out of CBS News, Libertarian Party on Sunday chose party activist Chase Oliver as its presidential nominee, rejecting former President Trump and RFK Jr. After each of them spoke at the convention, I think Trump did as well as can be expected. There's only so much you can do in front of a bunch of weirdos, people who strip, people who show up and do naked stuff, people who say it's my freedom, and my freedom basically only ends when it infringes on your freedom. How about my freedom not to see your weird, fat, naked body? I don't want that. There were people like that all over PorkFest. Also, weirdly, they're like kind of pro-gun gays. I don't know. They're like what libertarians are kind of like what Austinites used to be in Texas. It's a really bizarre mixture. Trump essentially got some booze and said, go on back if you don't want to win. Don't go with me. He's actually right in that case. And it makes a broader point that I think some of us should be aware of. It was mentioned on the Dan Bongino, Patrick Bet Davis discussion the other day. It's really critical that you all understand who it is that's at play right now. Who's in play for this presidential election cycle? It's not MAGA people. And it's not the hard left. It's the middle, which is probably 10 to 20%, maybe 15-ish% of the population might be interested in swaying their vote from one side to the other. People who are not real crazy about Donald Trump, people who are, sort of let down by Biden, and they're just looking for like what's going to be best for me. Every single political speech from here on out should be led with what's in it for me? What's in it for my wallet? What's in it for my job? What's in it for my industry? What's in it for my children? It should not be focused on the individuals. I think Trump has that sense. As we talked about the other day, he did a really good speech down in the Bronx. A lot of it comes down to saying, look, these policies are bad for you. If you're part of the working poor in this country, these are bad policies. The libertarians decided that they're going to throw away their votes away. I don't think a lot of people are actually going to vote for this guy. People who are registered as libertarians will still break down the factions, and they will probably get less than the 3%. But that's what Donald Trump said. He said, essentially, you guys want to put a nominee who's not going to get any votes? Knock yourself out and enjoy your 3% turnout. And that's what they get historically. Other than Ross Perot, who actually had the real potential I don't know how much was real, how much was imagined, how much was just kind of being screwed with behind the scenes. But Ross Perot was the last time I saw a real viable third party candidate. And Chase Oliver is not that. He's not even close. So I pulled his bio from his campaign website. It's not very good. He's a 38-year-old libertarian activist living in Atlanta. He's dubbed the most influential libertarian in America. I actually think that that Clint Russell is far more interesting and is far more sensible when it comes to the libertarian ticket. He was a vice presidential potential there, and he actually didn't get the nod for them either. So that's a shame. Libertarians decided to be unserious. He's openly gay. He is, like a gay with guns is kind of the way that he was billed. He's a clown show. He really is. And his big claim to fame is that he's run for office in a bunch of places and never won. He ran for Congress in 2020. He ran for Senate in 2022. He's a big fan of something that is called ranked choice voting. Those of you in Alaska kind of know what I'm talking about. The ranked choice voting did not work out well for those who were in Alaska. That's how you end up with Elisa Murkowski again. So not a serious candidate, not somebody who's going to pull any of the vote, certainly not going to be polling anywhere near the sort of, Donald Trump, RFK, Biden category. And RFK is still well behind those two. Oh well, libertarians, you gave it a shot, but not so much. It's not gonna land.
Già troppa frociaggine.
There's too much faggotry, and that's just not gonna work in this country. It's not gonna fly. So that's part one of this narrative. And the Pope is right, but he was talking about seminaries. I think it actually is much more broad. Let's keep going a little bit deeper. This is an interesting story. Came out of the AP. The AP is actually sort of celebratory about this. The fun thing about the AP is that they claim to be independent journalism that is just based on sourcing. But that's not the case. They actually have a position, and they've advocated for a position, and you can tell by this section out of their U.S. News piece. This one says Christian group temporarily opens beaches that it closed on Sunday mornings as court fight plays out. That's a fairly innocuous headline. They had to open the beaches and there's a court fight. But what's really going on there? This is in Ocean Grove, New Jersey. And this is, I would say, a proof that the so-called liberal but really progressive leftists, they don't just hate Christians, which is obviously true. It's obviously the way that they operate. They also hate tradition. And so when Christian tradition comes together, which is basically the basis for a lot of Western society, when you have Christian traditions in play, the left cheers when they are destroyed, dismantled, put on hold. What you're seeing on the screen here is an announcement. It says, for the last 155 years, we've closed our beach on Sunday mornings to honor God. The community, this is for a group that's a Methodist group. Not even really a hardcore group to begin with, but there's the Ocean Grove Camp Meeting Association. And they were shut down by New Jersey's Department of Environmental Protection. Now, what on earth does the Environmental Protection Group have to do with shutting down a beach or forcing it to open? This is a group that since 1869 has had a Christian seaside retreat at the Jersey Shore, and they have closed their beaches on Sunday mornings for religious services. That's just it, for 155 years. You have the government in the state of New Jersey, which is one of the worst states for freedom. They have the worst tax structures. They're in the top 5 for that. They're in the top 5 for worst businesses, places to open up. Yeah, those of you who have been paying attention to what my friend Steve Gray said, former FBI agent, he's sort of appalled at sort of their windmill things. They've got all kinds of wild things going on, but they're all in on the climate pagan woke agenda. And in this case, they've used the Department of Environmental Protection to go after the state, or this non-state entity, this religious organization, because they're quote unquote violating state beach access laws. I'm not sure how that falls under the mandate of protecting the environment. They've threatened the organization, this Camp Meeting Association, with fines up to $25,000 a day. Let me get my numbers right here. They're threatened with $25,000 a day in fines. And so rather than eat up a huge amount of fines, we've seen that these people are willing to go after that and try to get it. They have opened their beaches, but they're doing so under protest while the court cases are being appealed. The association sought an emergency ruling in its favor because they wanted to have this holiday weekend to do what they always do on Sundays, which is celebrate their Christian religious services. It's very interesting to think that the state government is going to get in play and going to inject itself in whether or not people can have private religious services. It's also interesting that it's celebrated by the AP to me. Those are the two pieces of it, the media coverage of it and then the actual story of the state. So here's what's really wild to me. When you look at the way the political left operates, they're 100% all in on the federal government. They are people who don't love federalism per se. They love centralized power. They like to see the federal government having all of it, right up until the point when it's burdensome, when it's in the way of the agenda that they have. They want the federal government to have all the authorities because the states are a bad spot, unless the state is doing what they want. We saw this in New York, where we had a judge, and if you guys just came from the Amrad podcast, I was reminded listening to Steve, this judge said that the Second Amendment doesn't exist. This is New York. It doesn't exist in Dexter Taylor's case. Why is that? Because when the federal government is the tool that they want to use, they'll use it. And when the state government is more preferable for accomplishing the agenda, they will use that as well. It goes to my argument, my continuing argument, that when we look at the Republican versus the Democrat Party is united in trying to get wins, regardless of why or who it hurts. They're just all in. They are united for whatever the agenda looks like, even though the agenda doesn't even make sense. They're 100% in on making sure that black people don't have to have IDs to vote because they think that black people can't get a driver's license, which is absurd. I don't know any black people that are like that. That's bizarre. But they also want to step in and have the federal government come into play and push down. They want a federal abortion law that says we're going to codify Roe v. Wade. We want to stop the states from doing the things we want, except when the states are doing things like gun control, when they're shutting down religious services. It's this bizarre moment. They don't have to have intellectual honesty, and they don't even have to avoid the cognitive dissonance. In fact, on the political left, I think cognitive dissonance is the order of the day. You have to be able to hold things that don't align with themselves. And that's how you run this. That's how you get people that are anti-gun. They don't want people to be able to defend themselves, but they also are 100% in favor of killing babies right up until the point of birth. You can't have things make sense. And so they don't want speech regulated. God forbid you get involved in doing something like this, where you destroy or you mark up or you drive on a street and you leave a skid mark across it, do a tire burnout on a pride flag, which is the religion of the left, right? That is their symbol. If you do that, you're very, very bad. That's not free speech. But if you burn an American flag, it's of course protected free speech. You have to allow drag queen story hours, but you cannot have Christians shut down a beach that they've had rights to for 155 years because that's bigoted. This is an old video, but it's coming back into play again. There is more and more of this going on, and people are looking at court cases, and of course the state has gone out there. The mayor of this particular city said that they were going to reface all of the pride flags that get burnouts. So I guess keep burning them out, but they're looking at people for criminal liabilities for defacing public property. It's a freaking street, people. Yeah, that overbearing techno music was a guy in a big diesel truck who was laying on the pedal, spinning the tires, and quote unquote defacing and or just driving in his own preferred way. He didn't even leave the lane of traffic from what I could tell. The thing that I found most interesting in that video, if you were watching, on the bottom left-hand side was what looks like a man. I'm going to say man based on the pattern of walking and the style and the build of the person, although an effeminate man, wearing a dress or skirt or some kind of sarong, like a bathing suit wrap-up. And he's walking with a cell phone, is he not? And he's getting that truck license plate, and he's capturing this video of this crime happening, this defacing of the LGBTQIA pride flag, which, by the way, that was not just a regular pride flag. That had the tranny stuff in there and all the other nonsense. You think that this guy is in favor of that flag being put places and public funds supporting that nonsense. I mean, I get it. It's probably going to be some conservative people that have to paint it. Can we be real? It's hard skills like painting and laying down asphalt and roads and, pouring concrete. Those are generally speaking not particularly left-wing weirdos. Those are men with calluses who have, concrete dust in their lungs. They've got sawdust in their eyes and things like that. But they're still going to paint it. And they're still going to let the city virtue signal to that weird sarong-wearing guy. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. It reminds me that
Già troppa frociaggine.
there's just too much frociaggine. There's too much of it. It's everywhere. And we keep seeing it. It's possibly how you end up with this really, really weird moment where this viral video just went out. I just saw it. I don't know if you guys are seeing these on social media as well, but sometimes I see stuff and I go like, what does it even mean? There's a story we'll talk about later on about people, children, teenagers that are staying in their houses. I think that and the too much faggotry argument is why you end up with a guy doing this. First of all, this is the fanciest, coolest looking tape measure I've ever seen. And my instinct is that he's never actually used a real tape measure. I've got 2 Craftsman tape measures. Why? Because one of them is always in a place that's not convenient. The other one is always with me. So I'm always grabbing one of the others. And when I do, the most important thing about a tape measure for me is that it is durable. It has to take a drop from at least standing height, but maybe from shoulder height, because I'm constantly dropping the thing as I am holding the tape measure and a pencil to mark it and a hammer in my other hand and all the other things that are going on. Whenever you do real work on lumber or drywall, or if you're out there taping and cutting things, like you're going to drop your tape measure. So this one that this guy has, very, very fancy. Doesn't look like it would hold up to my kind of use, but also it's the kind of tape measure that a guy who doesn't know the nominal versus the actual dimensions of lumber. Is this another instance of just too much factory, even at your Home Depot or your hardware store?
2 inches by 10 inches. Let's double check. Uh-oh. Missing 3/4 of an inch there. Let's try the long way. This, again, should be 2 inches. Oh, missing another ½ inch. Strange. All right, a 2 by 6. Let's check it out. Wait a second. 2 by 10. Let's check it out. 2 by 8 inches.
What is going on here? First of all, the kind of guy who buys a really, really cool tape measure, like I said, tells me that they don't probably use it. But how do you not know the nominal dimensions of lumber? It's always like that. I figured that out when I was probably, 8 years old. The first time that you go out there and you go, oh, 2 by 4 must mean 2 inches by 4 inches. No, it doesn't. No, that's just not how it is. You just got to learn. You just got to learn that all of them are going to have some, your 10-inch board is actually 9 1/4. That's just what it is. The 2 inches is 1 1/2. Sorry, bro. It's been like this for decades and decades. There's actually probably a really good reason. Maybe we'll dig into it for tomorrow's show. I'm blown away that people don't know this. Like, you're a grown man. That was a grown human being of an adult age enough to afford a cool tape measure that does all the calculations for you, so you don't even have to read the notches. And he doesn't know. That just tells me you've never tried to build anything. Ever. You've never tried to build anything. Because it wouldn't work. Every single plan is based on the actual nominal, not the nominal, but the actual dimensions. So you have to be able to stack them in. If you put 2 2x4s together, you're going to get a 3-inch stack. I don't know. It scares me. It tells me that men are not kind of the men that we expected. I'll tell you a guy who is. He's pushing the envelope every day. Donald Trump. They're responding to the special counsel. So this is the story. Right now, all the lefty news cycle is very, very excited. And they want you to know that the wrap-up is coming in. Also, I found this interesting. MSNBC was reporting that Joe Biden has actually scheduled time and is planning on addressing the nation after the verdict is released. Why would Joe Biden do that? Does he know something we don't know about the verdict? George Hill and I were talking about it the other day. You see people plan speeches when they know the outcome, when they know what they're going to be talking about. The odds are is that, Joe Biden can't speak off the cuff. He's going to come right off a teleprompter. So why is he Why is he picking a time and already setting the American people up for his address post-Trump trial verdict in New York? Makes me a little bit concerned. It makes me concerned that it's going to be just a New York trial and that we're going to see a New York jury. There's still, with all of the weakness that they've had in that case, you'd expect at least one person to just go, I don't know, I'm not in on this. The beyond the reasonable doubt, I can't get there. You'd expect there at least to be a hung jury on that. But when Biden books time, it tells you a little bit of something, does it not? This is another little story that you're seeing on there talking about the fact that they've asked him, because of the wake of what happened last week and the filings that Trump's attorneys have made in the classified documents case. They're essentially making all these different arguments. They've tried to suppress the information that came out of the search warrant. I think there's a lot of problems with the search warrant. I think it's on very shaky legal footing. It is overly broad, as we've talked about. That goes back over a year now. We talked about that. The search warrant gave them massive authority to search a huge amount of space on a 17-acre property, including private residences that had nothing to do at all with Donald Trump, space that he didn't control. Usually when you write a search warrant, you have to be quite specific about the places that you plan on searching and why. There has to be a good justification in it. The problem I think that happens right now with modern search warrants is that so much of the information can be digital. That didn't seem to be the issue with the classified document case, obviously. It shouldn't, at least. But when they talk about like what can be in a smart card or a memory stick, they're so small you can put them almost anywhere, and it opens up spaces that would otherwise not be reasonable to look. Papers can kind of go in a lot of places, but papers are kind of in a certain size. They kind of end up being like 8.5 by 11, whatever they are. The dimensions of the paper should actually determine where you can and where you cannot look. That's not the case with this search warrant. There are plenty of issues with it. In any case, Trump, as you know, likes to say his piece, and he has been doing so. In fact, he created a whole social media platform to do it after he got deplatformed from the others. And the special counsel went in and sought an emergency action over the weekend, trying to get him to shut up. They just wanted to get him to not speak in the middle of this election cycle, which is so strange. The people that are defending the Constitution the same way that I swore to don't seem to care about it. They said, quote, Trump's repeated mischaracterization of these facts in widely distributed messages as an attempt to kill him, his family, and Secret Service agents has endangered law enforcement officers involved in the investigation and prosecution of this case and threatened the integrity of these proceedings. That's their argument. I mean, I get that these people have a right to be safe in doing their job. They really do, whether you like them or not. But can we talk about something that's really true? All FBI agents, as mentioned last week, are constantly able to use deadly force to defend themselves when the right criteria are met. And they're all armed. All the law enforcement officers that were involved in this are armed. That's the end. It's the end of it. They have protection. They're given authority. They have a badge. They have body armor. They're given a handgun and a rifle most of the times, although not all the times. And their names have been redacted from all this kind of stuff. Even if some of us know the names of the people involved, they're redacted across the board. These rights are supposed to belong to the people that are on trial, not to the government. The government doesn't have any special right to fair proceedings. So if Trump wants to go out there and talk, it is antithetical to all American things. You should see the libertarians up in arms over this. They're too busy putting a pro-drag queen guy up. But they should be pissed. Because free speech is free speech, no matter how inconvenient. We've talked about it, but mis, dis, and malinformation are still constitutionally protected. In fact, they're the reasons why the speech is protected. The folks who wrote that document, the reason that our Bill of Rights was signed into law is because these guys, in recent memory, had just done inflammatory speech that would have resulted in them dying over it. They kind of care about being able to express their opinions. Even the ones that were not favorable to the current regime, in that case, the British Crown. But, what on earth are we doing where we've got special counsel offices that are trying to shut down free speech? This is not the way America is supposed to work, folks. And we all kind of know that. All right, I'm going to pivot over. We're going to get back to a little bit more. Where is it? I got to play it again.
Già troppa frociaggine.
Too much faggotry. We're going to get back to more of it in 1 second here. Before we do, let me say thanks to my buddies over at Patriot Coolers. I've got mine sitting on the desk right now. I've got a straw in there. It's actually inconvenient. There's two types of tops, And the Gen 1 top actually works really well. You can pull the little spill-resistant lid out and drop a silicone straw in. Got some ice water because I'm going to need to hydrate today. Promo code Kyle, KYLE, over at patriotcoolers.com, patriotcoolers.com. Promo code KYLE will save you 10%. And you guys can customize your own. And you can make it look just like the one you see on the screen and the one that I have on my desk. It's fantastic. This is the other one that is not done. I actually have one of these coffee mugs in white, and they etched it as well. It's so fine in detail because they do it with a laser. It's actually, you have to get up close to see that there's a tiny little rifle and the plume and all of that. It's really neat. If you guys are not customizing a tumbler over at patriotcoolers.com, promo code Kyle, what are you doing? Why are you waiting? It's summer. You got to stay hydrated, people. So you might as well check it out. You can also look at their hard-sided coolers, their soft-sided coolers, the backpacks and the lunch packs and all that kind of stuff. All excellent products, great people that have been supporting us since February last year, and we appreciate you guys supporting them as they offer the Suspendables logos for not a penny more. Yeah, they're all just loaded in there. We don't make any additional money on it. We just want you to support them, and we appreciate them supporting us. So that's kind of how this works. Okay, so I told you we're going to get into more of this. We're going to get to the Catholic Pope in a minute. But I just want to give you an example of more of this stuff. This came from CBS. Is this CBS too? Yeah, second CBS story. Swapping one food for another can help lower your household carbon emissions, a study. Well, thank God for that. The climate pagans want you to know that you're the real problem because of what you're eating. It's not industrialization. It's not the fact that China is out there doing all this wild stuff and doing all the industrial processes that our EPA has outlawed, so we can't bring a lot of manufacturing back to the United States. We're fine with the climate being destroyed as long as it's not the climate, in our backyard. Have you guys noticed this? You ever see these videos? I remember seeing a video going back a long ways. It was a video of people that were collecting petroleum products. I think it was crude oil, sort of Jed Clampett style, with buckets out of this marshy place. And it was a Shell distillery or a Shell collection point. They were literally, it was welling up out of the ground and it was just going through this marshland. So they would collect it with hand buckets and they were walking through it. We're fine with that, right? Nobody thinks twice about firing up their vehicle, putting on a North Face jacket, which is made from petroleum products, wearing anything or using anything that is made from plastics. The left is fine with those as long as they don't see it. That's the real problem. That's the reason, by the way, these tumblers can't be made in the United States by law. It's not really law. It's by rule from the EPA. But they can't be made here. Double-walled insulated steel has to be made overseas because of the processes that are involved. It's not allowed in the United States. Does that make any sense to you? Meanwhile, they're telling you that as long as you're thinking about it, you can make incremental steps in making the climate and the planet a better place for everyone. This is from Paulina Slaminsky or Smolinsky. Yeah, how about that? Posted a story talking about swapping meat lasagna for vegetarian lasagna. Oh. I don't want anything to do with vegetarian lasagna. If you feed me vegetarian lasagna, I will act like a 2-year-old. I will spit it out. I will open my mouth and let it fall out. I actually had a negotiation one time with my mother-in-law because she really likes cauliflower and she made this cauliflower casserole and she's gotten lots of praise for it. And that's fine. People like that kind of stuff. I just don't like cauliflower. It's one of the many things that I draw the line. After 40, I figured I've tried enough things that if I don't want to try it, I'm not going to try it. So the rule is as follows. If you ever offer me something that has cauliflower in it, I will tell you very specifically that I'm willing to try it as long as you're willing to let me behave like a toddler if I don't like it. And I will just open my mouth and I'll drop it on the floor. She did not take me up on that offer, much to her credit. Actually, that was a really smart move. But vegetarian lasagna, get rid of the meat. Like, why? Why do we want to do that? Don't any of you in the chat, by the way, start telling me about how good cauliflower is. I despise it. The only way that you make it good is by covering it with stuff so you can't touch it. So it's like, oh, it's got all the cheese on there. Now you can't taste the cauliflower part of it. I'm not trying to cover it up. I'll just eat whatever the real thing is with cheese. Perfect. No problem. The study shows that you could even swap beef for chicken in a stew, and you can save on greenhouse gas emissions. This is all part of a push to make the world more environmentally friendly and reduce greenhouse gases and emissions from household groceries. This is coming from the George Institute for Global Health and the Imperial College in London. They want you to give up meat and make smarter, climate-conscious choices that aggregate to impact carbon reduction. They're hoping that consumers will become increasingly aware of the environmental impact of the food system and that they will make more sustainable choices, but they lack reliable information. So we need to put it on the labels. That's what their claim is. We need to guilt people, right? I actually did a short video for Catholic Votes Edify the other day, and we talked about this sort of climate pagan situation. And it is, in fact, kind of like old school Catholic guilt. Any of you who've ever been raised around Catholics, if you went to Catholic school, you don't have to be Catholic to have that experience. There's a concept of Catholic guilt specifically. I don't know why that's so in the front of my head right now, but feeling guilt, the reason is because then there's an option for atonement. And the left offers this option for atonement. It's buy carbon credits, it's change your behavior, it's admit that you're very, very bad and you're hurting Mother Gaia. And then you go out there and you do this thing where you swap, well, I'm eating chicken now. I've given up beef. You know what? There was this guy whose name it was in the early stages of the internet back in the late 90s. And he had a website. It was like a blog post. It was terrible, by the way. It was like the worst graphics. And it was just angry guy takes that I loved as a teenager, but I still like it. And it was called Xmatics. I don't know if that's still out there. It was like the number one shit posting site on the internet for a long time, back before the internet was big. And Xmatics had this T-shirt that he would sell, and it was a picture of a guy essentially eating all these endangered species, like a toucan and a dodo bird and a dinosaur and a bunch of other nonsense. And he said, for every animal vegetarians, for every animal that you don't eat, I'm going to eat 2 of them. And all those animals, by the way, were getting crushed into like this burger. It was a really crude graphic. That's where I'm at. For every animal that you don't eat, I want to eat 2 of them. I don't get it. I don't get how, you can see on the screen right now the kind of guy that's making these kind of advocates. They're advocating for weakness. They're advocating for guys in sarongs who videotape a man driving with a pickup truck and a diesel engine. They're advocating for guys who have fancy tape measures and don't know what lumber is and has no need of a tape measure because he's never actually gone out there and measured and cut any actual lumber. Guy can't run a saw, I imagine. These are the kind of people that are trying to tell us how to do it. What's weird is that the world that they live in is only constructed essentially by aggressive, hardy men and women who forged an existence out of nothing. I'm constantly amazed. When I was in Portland in 2020, you see all these like soy beta Antifa clowns. They're out there and they're raging against whatever's going on. And it made me think, how would the ancestors that set up places like Portland, that scratched and eked a living out of nothing? They went into the wilderness facing, unknown Indians and natural strange things. They had bears that were sized that, the grizzlies and the brown bears that are out in the California and Oregon and Washington. They didn't have those on the East Coast. They hadn't seen them in Europe. These are monsters. These are huge animals. So you've got all this wild stuff that is trying to destroy you. And they created a space for human beings to thrive. And they were beautiful cities, Seattle and Portland and Bend, Oregon, right? They're just absolutely gorgeous. And they're taken over by the weakest of the herd. The people who would have never made that journey across the world and gone off into the unknown. That would have never happened. It gives a lot of credence to the cycle of humanity that continues to happen, which is that strong men, hard men create good times. Those good times create the soft men. And then those soft men go out there and they bring us right on back to some hard times. We've got hard times coming here. And we are starting to realize it when even the Pope lets you know.
Già troppa frociaggine.
Oh, già troppa frociaggine. There's too much of it. It's too weak. And even the White House is getting in on this stuff, by the way. This green agenda, the climate paganism. This is a story coming from CNN. White House is going to announce actions to modernize electric. Man, I'm having a hard time. I'm coming back off the weekend. I didn't get any sleep last night either. The White House is trying to do modernization of America's electrical grid. And you think, oh, that's okay. We need a modern electrical grid, right? Because the Chinese are trying to hack it. Our infrastructure is very old. There's some liabilities. Americans don't want to have their power shut off. That's what makes modern life possible. No, that's not why. Because they want to pave the way for clean energy and fewer outages. So it's all about the green agenda. It's not about the fact that people want to run more aggressive infrastructure because that's what it takes to be grown-ups. Think about the things you used to spend your money on when you were a kid versus what you spend your money on as an adult. Grown-ups, adults, have to spend their money on things that are not fun, like rent, like insurance, like filling up your car with gas. They can't just spend it all on leisure activities, and they can't go out there and spend their money on discretionary purchases, right? You got to go out there and buy diapers and wipes, trash bags. Like, there's nothing fun about any of that stuff. So the White House is trying to sell people on the unsexy idea of infrastructure. Remember that infrastructure bill that supposedly passed? It was supposed to do everything. Apparently hasn't done that. They're going to do it, and they're going to basically get the climate pagans on board by placating them and saying, look, the reason that we're doing this not fun stuff, we could be giving our money to pay off your student loans, but instead we're going to try to modernize the infrastructure for the planet, for the climate change. The White House announces Tuesday its step to modernize this roadblock on the clean energy transformation on America's aging electrical infrastructure. Really unreal. Do you guys remember that the infrastructure is also a target of white supremacy? We covered that a long time ago on this program. But remember, they don't forget about that kind of thing. The new initiative between the feds and 21 states aims to make faster fixes and improve the grid, committing to building a bigger and more modern grid as part of a larger effort to reduce power outages, increase electrical transmission capacity. All that's good. By the way, it's using coal. That's how a ton of it is done. And fossil fuels. They're going to act like it's not. And this is a massive hurdle to getting more clean energy on the grid, reducing the planet-warming pollutions causing the climate crisis. Does anyone else ever see, by the way, the irony that the people that are trying to get you to stop eating meat are trying to make you eat plants, and plants are the things that use carbon and put oxygen back? Does that make any sense? Again, if you're on the political left, cognitive dissonance is part of the way it works. You just accept that your ideas don't even make sense internally. You're only interested in outcomes on the agenda. The agenda is not to be questioned, which is how we end up with this. And that's how you end up in a situation.
Già troppa frociaggine.
There's too much frociaggine. It's how it happens, right? Anyhow, this is their big push. If you got me on board and said it is a national security emergency, that we have an unmodernized electrical grid and that our enemies can use cyber attacks to take it down, I think some of us would be like, yep, that makes sense. The state should be able to hold on to more money and use it appropriately in the 50 different laboratories for freedom and solve these problems. Instead, we're going to have inefficient federal government providing quote unquote technical assistance and making sure that the states can apply for federal money and loans to build more transmission lines. There's going to be some catches on this stuff. You know it. And they're going to make the states bend the knee to the federal government sort of nonsense. This climate crisis. That's how they're going to do it. All right. Can we go to the Pope? Can we get right here? The Pope, Francis, he uses slang language to complain about the high number of gay men in Italian seminaries. This story, you couldn't make it up that this story is broken on the same day that the libertarians decided to nominate this guy. You can't make it up. It's so good. Italian paper of record, which I will not butcher their name, confirmed that Pope Francis used demeaning Italian slang to highlight that openly gay men should not be admitted to Italian seminaries. According to the story, the episode took place in a closed-door meeting in the Italian Bishops' Conference, known as CEI, who gathered in Rome on May the 20th. It was actually a conversation about a very serious issue, which has concerned the CEI for some time, whether and to what extent to admit homosexual candidates for the priesthood into seminaries. But while reiterating the need to welcome everyone, he expressed in the colloquial language that there is, quote, already too much faggotry in the seminaries.
Già troppa frociaggine.
The word frocio, I think I'm saying that correctly, is very much like the word faggot in English, and it has been dated, and it is offensive. It's also hilarious. It's hilarious that the Pope just finally, this guy who's got kind of a woke agenda, who wants to do a blessing, they said Italian's not even his mother tongue. And so he said this. It was a very short and clear message that they're going to try to say that he didn't understand how heavy and how offensive that word is. No, I think he knew. He's just letting you know. Look, man, there's too much of this. There's got to be a line. The line is you can't be part of that. There's long been issues with homosexuality in the Vatican. This is the first time I've ever heard a pope say anything about it. And that you can't be letting these guys into the seminary. It's perfect. If you are of ambiguous sexuality, if you are effeminate, but nobody knows that you're gay, it's not a lifestyle that you're living, you can be a Catholic and do that. I've had discussions, actually. There are members of the FBI that sort of like talk to me sometimes. I know some of them listen to the podcast. The question is not whether or not you're allowed to be gay in this country. Of course you are. You can do anything you want. What you can't be is someone who is Catholic, specifically someone who wants to go into seminary to be a priest and represent yourself in that way. It's not appropriate. That's like saying you're a vegetarian for meat. Like, I'm for it. I'm for meat. 100%. But you can't be a vegetarian too, because that's what vegetarian means. And that's what Catholic means, that you can't live an openly gay life. And you certainly can't celebrate it or go into the seminary looking for the holy orders to become a priest. Anyway, this story comes from Catholic Vote. It's one of the top stories that came in today's Loop. It's such a good one. When I saw it, I cracked up. I couldn't help it. It's like, I know I'm going to be playing this translation. I didn't know I was going to find it on Google Translate, but
Già troppa frociaggine.
There's too much faggotry. Say it's the Pope. You know what? That sounds good enough for me. It's the first thing that we've totally agreed on, and I appreciate that at least he's not always screwing it up. Yeah. He's not pro-abortion. He's against IVF. He's against the things that are supposed to be. He's got some bad ideas, it seems like. This is not one of them. Let's give the guy credit where it's due. Listen, when it comes to politics, and being the Pope is very sort of political at this point, it's worth noting that when politicians give us what we want, we give them attaboys. When they give us something that we don't like, we go out there and we slam it and we condemn it. That's all. Pretty good stuff. How about some more pretty good stuff? How about meat? We're talking about meat a bunch. I'm down to my last bag. It's still full, but we are down to the end of the bag. MattHatJerky.com/Kyle. Again, MattHatJerky.com/Kyle. Try the gourmet flank. Whatever flavor you like. I like black truffle, number 1. Roasted garlic, number 2. The original is probably my 3rd. Seriously. If you're not trying the gourmet flank, the USDA prime cuts, you're missing out. It has high fat content, so it lasts a little bit less time. You've got to eat it more quickly. That's going to be really easy because everybody in your family will want it. Promo code Kyle, KYLE at checkout, saves you 20%. That's what's in it for you. Sign up there. You can get a monthly subscription. That still also tags us. But if you go through that MattHatJerky.com/Kyle, 20% off whenever you decide to sign up for something. Once you figure out what you like, you can set it up on a recurring subscription. Very easy. And do it. Like, it's the best. The high fat content, I'm just going to read you here. The serving size, there's 6 in this bag right here. This is the 6-ounce bag, so they're 1-ounce servings. 6 grams of fat, and there are 22 grams of protein, 0 carbohydrates, 150 calories total. So you eat 1 ounce of jerky, you're getting yourself a nice dose of meat-based proteins that your body can use and some high fat content. That's where the flavor comes from. That's why it's so tender. It's really, really good. Check it out. 100%. Listen, more of this stuff. This one came from that weird article I told you I read on CNN over the weekend. And for whatever reason, it seems to make sense to me that these are all related. These stories all kind of fit together. There's a shrinking life is what they called it. A shrinking life, why some Asian youth are withdrawing from the world. It's not just Asian youth, by the way. This little picture shows us a bunk bed in some little Asian dormitory situation, very tight little quarters, very neatly organized shirts and stuff. And this kid is just staring at a phone all night. They're using pseudonyms so they don't embarrass anybody. But Charlie was 15 when his life inexplicably shrank to fit within the frame of his lower bunk bed in his family's cramped Hong Kong apartment. I felt very depressed and confused, like I didn't know what I wanted. He's now 19, and he's still learning how to navigate the world outside. Charlie is among the, I guess they call it the hikikomori, a Japanese term for people who cut themselves off from society for months or years, often Gen Z or millennials in the prime of their youth. Why is this? Why did this happen? What's going on there? I mean,
Già troppa frociaggine.
That's part of it, is it not? It's got to be. It's faggotry. It's too much faggotry. The phenomenon emerged in Asia, but is particularly well documented in Japan. But there are similar stories resurfacing around the United States and Spain and France. And yeah, it's guys who have who haven't gone outside and have never gone to a hardware store. They've never walked through the lumber department. They don't know what sawdust smells like. They don't know what it's like to run a saw. They don't know how to use tools. They've never tried to construct anything with their hands and their minds. And so they're confused. And they're living in this sad reality that's basically social media. Their whole existence is basically from their nose to their phone. And they're having online internet girlfriends, and they're having relationships with AI chatbots. It's horrific. By the way, that's the end of the species when that happens. When your relationships are with machines, it's over for your bloodline. There's a lot of these people, they're not even voluntarily celibate. It's part of why the abortion agenda is so appalling. In a first world nation that has all the blessings that we have all of the technologies, we have all of the capabilities to do an incredible life. We can drive down the street. I can drive down the street and I have 3 hardware stores. I live in a town of 7,000 people. There are 3 different hardware stores I can go to. I can go to a Tractor Supply. I can go to McCoy's Building, which I'm going to be going there all the time now. There's an Ace. They've all got lumber yards except the tractor, but they've got other stuff. It's so much weakness. Some of it I think is our own fault as parents. We shielded our kids. We didn't tell them what was right. We didn't let them go fail. We were worried because we knew too much. We knew about the dangers out there. But some of us still remember growing up in the 80s where, like, my wife told me she rode the subway when she was a kid. She was riding the subways in New York City in the 80s and early 90s. Like, when she was like 8 and 10 years old, she was just jumping on the train and going places. You could never convince me that that's a good idea for my young daughters right now. And it was probably worse back then, to be fair. We just didn't know about it, or we just knew that the world involves risk. These are people, these stories, they're happening in Hong Kong, they're happening in Japan, they're happening in the United States too. It's the COVID people. It's the folks that looked around and they're so scared of any danger that they want to get rid of all danger. That was part of the fun of being a kid, is that you didn't know what danger was. And you did dumb things that were unbelievably dangerous regularly because you could, because you're still kind of invincible. And then you start learning, how many of you don't have a broken bone? I would say that you weren't pushing it. I'm not saying that broken bones are great. They suck. They're the worst. I broke my right wrist when I was 8 years old, and it was over about this time of year. It was right at the end of the school year, and my wrist was broken, and I knew that I was going to miss out on swimming on 4th of July, and we used to be able to go and swim down in the pools and clean, they would throw coins in. They would just get these like handfuls of coins when coins actually had value, and they'd throw them in the pool, and we'd swim down and collect them. I had an awesome breath hold. I could go under there for a long time as a little kid. I was an awesome little swimmer. So at 8 years old, man, I was a champ. I'd come up with like $5 worth of coins in my pocket. And I couldn't do it. But why did I do it? Because I was trying to do cool stuff. I was trying to do monkey bar tricks or whatever, And then they sent me into a handwriting class right afterwards. God always has such a weird sense of humor in my life. Every time I've really been really messed up, I got worse messed up because of the way that people tried to help me. I went in from breaking my arm in 2nd grade to sitting and trying to do a handwriting class. You can't make stuff up like that. That was the way the 80s worked. These poor kids are sitting there looking at a phone and they've given up on reality and they don't even know that human interactions are scary. It's scary to go ask a girl out on a date. It's scary to go talk to a stranger and say, hey, I think you're really attractive. I'd like to do something with you. Are you interested? No, you think I'm a troll? Okay. Ouch. That's going to hurt. Guess what? You become a better person. Probably one of the best and weirdest things that happened in the way that I am the way that I am, and some of you have this experience too, is I moved all the time. I went to 10 different schools before I got to high school. I was always the new kid. I was always a stranger. I'm an introvert by heart. I don't want to hang out with people. Anybody who wants to hang out with me knows this. I don't want to go hang out. I just want to stay at home and do stuff in my garage, in my workshop. I want to run a saw. I want to go shoot targets. I want to have a range day by myself with no other people. But that wasn't an option. I was always new. I was always a kid that nobody knew. It's good for you to do that. It's good for you to expand that comfort zone. And if you don't, the species dies out, it turns out. If men didn't go into the woods and try to figure out if there was something safe or better, then we'd all be sitting there on the coast, on the east side, wondering if there was anything going on in America, or we'd still be sitting on the other shores and not sailing across the way the Vikings did. I mean, it may have been 1,000 years ago, but imagine the balls it took to get into a little boat, look at the stars and go, yep, we're going that way for however long it takes. Pretty wild. That spirit of adventurism, it's not there right now for the youth. They're worried about things that I can't even fathom. And that makes me worried for our country's future. It's the reason why you've got all kinds of insanity and issues like doing military recruiting. I told an audience last week, and I joined the military because I was pissed, because I knew that there was a lot of violence that I had in my tendencies. Like many young men sign up with anger and rage, and they want to go out and do something about that rage. And it's better to not get arrested stateside and do dumb things in this country. It's better for you to export that craziness. So we do. You become a Marine. You want to go and join the Navy. You go and join the Army. You want to go break things and hurt feelings overseas, because if you do it over here, you'll go to jail for it. It's kind of how it's always worked. Or we can have this guy. This man, this is a story coming from ABC. Very weird. Man throws flaming liquid on New York City subway, burns fellow rider. That's a nice way of saying that, right? The man said he had a cup of liquid, which he then set on fire in the subway and then threw it on a rider. By the way, if you are ever interviewed by the police, they will quote you when you say dumb things, folks. Public service announcement. The victim told the New York Post the following. He had a cup, he made fire, and he threw it all. I'm grabbing my face right now. I'm just palming my face, because really, he had a cup and he made fire. Those are the words that came out of your mouth. They're going to directly quote you. What kind of sub-English speaking goofball said that? The victim was a 23-year-old person recovering in the hospital. He shielded his fiance and his cousin from the burning liquid. It caught his shirt on fire and he slapped himself out. What happened to stop, drop, and roll? By the way, when you're on fire, you don't remember to stop, drop, and roll. Somebody has to stop, drop, and roll you. You can kick people's legs out and roll them around. It's better. The doctor said he had burns on a third of his body. Let's not miss the major part here. Shielded his cousin and his fiance. That's a good man thing to do, even if you can't speak English. The violent crime is pretty rare in the city's subway system. This is ABC making apologies for the failed mayoral term of Eric Adams. It serves about 3 million riders a day, but some of these high-profile attacks have left some riders on edge. Yeah, it used to be worse. In the 70s, it was probably much more dangerous, and also in the 80s. Giuliani cleaned it up. It's heading back that way. The question is, when will it get bad enough that they actually want to get somebody on the political right who steps in and does something about it? The problem is, for conservatives, is we are constantly fighting that instinct. What is government overreach? How much law enforcement do we really want? It turns out in cities, you might need a little bit more when people are in closer proximity. You might need a little bit more government. But that doesn't mean they should infringe on your liberties. It's always going to be dangerous to be around other people because people are weird, as I have learned. Actually, I had an FBI agent tell me that. And an FBI agent told me, she said, you're new here, but when you get out there and start talking to people and interviewing them, like you'll find out that there's some really weird people in the world. And I said, Sharon, I'm 36 years old. I have a pretty good idea of how weird people are in the world. I've worked on an ambulance. I was in the military. I've lived in like 8 states. What are you talking about? There's something really strange if you're telling a grown person that the world is full of weirdos. The world is full of weirdos. If you guys haven't heard that here, you heard it here first, I guess. But yeah, there's some risk being in public. It's part of the reason why as people get older and they assume less risk, they don't do it. But not when you're young. When you're young, you're out there. You're 23. You're shielding your fiance. That's your job. So good for that person. For whatever reason, some of the stuff that keeps going viral is about the spiritual war that's going on in this country. I'm going to do one more quick little read, and then I want to play this video of a nun that's gotten some traction. She's talking about Donald Trump potentially being elected and what it would take. We are dealing with this spiritual war, and the war is against climate pagans. It is a war of religion, even if they don't want to call it religion because they hate religion. It is religious in nature, which means we're getting zealots from the other side, right? And that's how you end up with them pushing the ball too far and getting this sort of thing.
Già troppa frociaggine.
There's too much frociaggine. Let's hear something like some voice of wisdom in just a moment here. Like I said, a spiritual war. Before we do, Guys, if you want to support the program and you guys are interested in some bedding, if you're interested in some slippers and so on, you can go to mypillow.com/Kyle. That's our promo code over at Mike Lindell's website, mypillow.com/Kyle. The promo code Kyle will save you up to 50% depending on what you get. It's the same deal anybody else will give you. Doesn't matter if you're using anybody else's code. You can use my code and support us, which we appreciate. Let them know that we sent you over there and that we are promoting their goods. I'm guessing Mike Lindell knows the difference between actual and nominal dimensions. I just have that instinct. Men with mustaches tend to know that sort of thing. I feel like that's it's not universal, but it's pretty close. mypillow.com/Kyle, promo code KYLE if you're on the website, and you guys can get that up there. Are you guys ready for this little video? This is kind of refreshing to see.
An election year in the U.S. In normal times, an election is the moment when ordinary people can take back control of their nation's destiny. But these are not normal times. Across the globe, men and women are waking up to the alarming truth that governments no longer serve God or the people. And beloved, I'll interrupt to say myself that if President Trump gets in, it's a complete act of God. If the Democrats, if Biden is not reelected, it is a complete act of God, because every scheme and every evil is out there that he would continue to be our president, as inept and evil as he is.
There it is. This is the argument. So, guys, again, the Catholic Vote book, you guys can get it at store.catholicvote.org. It's God, for God, Country, and Sanity, How Catholics Can Save America. Nothing more Catholic than a nun telling you that the president is evil. And a very interesting, I think...
An election year in the U.S.
That's not what's supposed to happen. A very interesting sort of thought process, she says, that people around the globe are recognizing that we are not seeing government serve God or the people that are supposed to be in there. Okay? Yeah. She's just cutting to the bone with that. That's the reality of it, is it not? Make sure you guys have given us a like. Make sure that you're following the channel over here. We got 2 more things. I'm going to do a 5-star review, and then I've got a fantastic palate cleanser. We've talked about the problems going on in Asia. We've talked about the issue with too much faggotry. The antidote to this is real free speech and offensive speech. That's why I keep saying the word. It's my favorite word. Let's be real. It was my favorite word when I was in the military, too. It's the way we talk about it.
Già troppa frociaggine.
Yes, già troppa frociaggine. We need less of it. And you know who doesn't tolerate that? Nuns. It turns out they do not. All right, this 5-star review is going to be the exact opposite of what we've been doing on the show. This is from T. Cambogi, saying, Friendly Friday 5 stars. How did Garrett master the ability of quoting Bible verses that accurately apply to the conversation at hand? I wonder what he has to say about the
Già troppa frociaggine.
What does he say about the frociaggine, do you guys think? I don't know. We'll get Garrett on pretty soon to talk about it. If you guys did not see the Memorial Day episode they did yesterday on the American Radicals podcast, talking about some personal stories, and I know many of us have friends that we have lost. Yeah, many of us have seen people not come home from war. So Garrett shared a story about a friend of his that was killed over in Iraq. And it's it's worth a watch if you guys haven't seen it. Check out yesterday's the AMRAD podcast. It's rumble.com/AMRADPOD, AMRAD pod for the American Radicals podcast. Let's do something that cleans our palate a little bit as the day is getting ready. Are you guys ready for this one? This is how you get rid of the faggotry, I think. You just speak bluntly, honestly, and someone just said a must see. Yeah, open your eyes up. You guys will get a kick about what this. Okay, so let me describe this before. This is a comedian. Comedians often told funny, hard, uncomfortable truth that we can laugh at and we learn something about. He's talking about a potential land war in Asia. That's a tough topic. And he is talking to a decidedly and almost exclusively Asian audience. That's why this is so fun. And the people that they keep cutting to, which if you're not watching this is worth coming back and seeing. The people they keep cutting to is like a row full of Asian-looking men and one woman who's wearing like a hijab. What a fun... And they're all dying laughing, by the way. Nobody is upset about this. This is the way that you fix this.
If China invades Taiwan, it's Australia and the U.S. that got to defend Taiwan. Now, here's the thing, and we haven't had this discussion. We need to talk to y'all about this a little bit. But let's just be honest right now. How confident are we that we're going to be able to know who's who, right? Like, let's just... Once China touches land, it's going to be the Spider-Man meme. Like, hands for that one, y'all. We gotta do China. You guys will be shirts, obviously, because that's where they're made. And do you think you could tell a Taiwanese, bro? Just by looking at them? We need to learn that shit. Or come up with another strategy. I don't even want to tell y'all. I have a strategy. The second the war starts, we gotta tell every Taiwanese, listen, just for this period of time, open them up. Just for this period of time. It's like Friday Night Lights. Round eyes, full hearts, can't lose, okay?
It's so good. You got to say things that are going to push the envelope, and you defend your freedom of speech so we don't have to defend it with something else. We can defend it with words. Words are the biggest weapon of mass illumination. It is the way that we fight the fifth generation war. And that's how you do it. In a spiritual battle, you try to use words and move hearts, not use bullets, which end hearts from beating. That's my thoughts. I hope you guys had a nice recovery weekend. I hope you guys got some sawdust on your floor like I did. I've got some even upstairs because I've been working on a project. If you're watching over on the Catholic Vote Rumble channel, you guys will see a new one later on this week with kind of the fruit of my labors, if you will. I've been working on some neat stuff, some set design. It's a one-man shop here. That's how we do it. So we appreciate all of your support. If you guys want to subscribe to the channel over on Rumble, you can do so. It's $5 a month, and it supports us. We do appreciate your contributions there. It's 100% untouched by Rumble and is the best way to keep us free from influence, let's call it. We'll see you again tomorrow. I look forward to it. It'll be a weird Wednesday. This week is already going, and it is full steam. You guys have a good one out there. God bless you, and I'll see you in the morning.
Thanks for listening to the Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.
Già troppa frociaggine.